Have you ever wondered why certain fears grip you so tightly that they feel ancient? Like they've been carved into your soul long before you were born. Tonight, we're diving into something that will challenge everything you think you know about fear, trauma, and the mysterious threads that connect us to lives we've never consciously lived. Because what if I told you that your deepest, most inexplicable terrors aren't just random quirks of your psyche, but actual memories, bleeding through from experiences your soul has carried across lifetimes? This isn't just another exploration of phobias or anxiety. This is about understanding why some fears feel so primal, so beyond rational explanation, that they seem to emerge from the very fabric of your being. We're about to uncover how past life trauma doesn't just disappear when a body dies, but instead weaves itself into the energetic blueprint of who you become in your next incarnation. Picture this moment as stepping through a doorway, where modern psychology meets ancient wisdom, where science begins to acknowledge what mystics have known for millennia. Your soul carries scars, and those scars manifest as the fears that control your present life, in ways you've never imagined. Sarah had always been terrified of water. Not just afraid, but completely paralyzed by panic, whenever she came near any body of water deeper than a bathtub. The fear was so intense that she would break into cold sweats just thinking about swimming pools. And the ocean? Absolutely out of the question. What made this particularly strange was that Sarah had never had any traumatic water experiences in her current life. No near-drowning incidents. No accidents. Nothing that could logically explain this overwhelming terror. Her friends and family couldn't understand it. They'd grown up near lakes and beaches, but Sarah would refuse to join them for any water activities. She'd tried therapy, breathing exercises, even hypnosis, but nothing seemed to touch the core of this fear. It lived in her body like a living thing, coiled and ready to strike whenever water appeared. The psychological landscape of unexplained fears is fascinating territory. Unlike rational fears that develop from direct experiences, these primal terrors seem to exist independently of logic or memory. They're not learned responses, but rather inherited ones, passed down through channels that mainstream psychology is only beginning to acknowledge. These fears often carry specific characteristics. They're disproportionate to any actual threat. They resist traditional therapeutic approaches, and they feel deeply familiar, even when they make no rational sense. Sarah's water phobia had shaped her entire life. She chose apartments based on their distance from bodies of water. She avoided vacations that involved beaches or lakes. She even felt uncomfortable during rainstorms, as if the sound of water itself was somehow threatening. Her romantic relationships suffered, because potential partners couldn't understand why someone would be so irrationally afraid of something as basic as water. But Sarah's story takes a dramatic turn when she decided to explore past life regression therapy. Initially skeptical, she was desperate enough to try anything. During her first session, as the therapist guided her into a deep, relaxed state, Sarah's consciousness began to drift backward through time, beyond her current memories, beyond her birth, into something that felt ancient and terrifyingly familiar. In this altered state, she found herself experiencing vivid images and sensations that felt more real than dreams. She was a young woman, in what seemed like the 1800s, living in a small coastal village. The details were incredibly specific. the rough texture of her woolen dress, the salt smell in the air, the sound of seagulls crying overhead. But what struck her most was the overwhelming sense of love she felt for a man named Thomas, a fisherman who would go out to sea each day. The regression continued, and Sarah experienced their life together with startling clarity. They were deeply in love, planning to marry, building a future together. But then came the storm, a terrible tempest that destroyed Thomas's boat and claimed his life. In the regression, Sarah felt herself as this other woman, standing on the rocky shore, watching helplessly as the waves swallowed the man she loved. The grief was so intense, it felt like her very soul was being torn apart. But the trauma didn't end there. In her despair, overwhelmed by a grief too heavy to bear, this past version of herself had walked into those same waters, choosing to join Thomas rather than live without him. Sarah experienced every moment of that drowning, the cold water filling her lungs, the panic as she realized what she had done, the regret in her final moments. This phenomenon isn't unique to Sarah's experience. Researchers studying past life regression have documented thousands of cases where people's unexplained fears directly correlate with traumatic deaths or experiences in previous lifetimes. Dr. Ian Stevenson, who spent decades researching reincarnation at the University of Virginia, documented numerous cases of children who displayed specific phobias that matched the circumstances of deaths they claimed to remember from past lives. The mechanism behind this transfer of trauma across lifetimes involves what many researchers call cellular memory or soul memory. The idea is that consciousness, the essential self that survives physical death, carries with it not just memories, but also the emotional and energetic imprints of significant experiences. When this consciousness incarnates into a new body, these imprints can manifest as unexplained fears, phobias, or even physical conditions. Sarah's regression didn't stop with that first traumatic memory. Over several sessions, she began to understand how that ancient drowning had imprinted itself onto her soul. The terror she felt around water in her current life wasn't just a random phobia. It was her soul's desperate attempt to protect her from reliving that traumatic experience. Her subconscious mind, carrying the memory of drowning, had developed an intense aversion to water as a survival mechanism. What's particularly fascinating about past life trauma is how it can manifest in unexpected ways. Sometimes it's direct, like Sarah's water phobia connecting to drowning. But often, the connections are more symbolic or emotional. Someone with an unexplained fear of authority figures might have been executed by a tyrannical ruler. A person terrified of fire might have died in a blaze. Someone with overwhelming claustrophobia could be carrying memories of being buried alive or trapped in a collapsed building. These soul memories don't just create fears. They can also manifest as unexplained attractions, talents, or preferences. A child prodigy who seems to innately understand music might be accessing abilities developed over multiple lifetimes. Someone who feels immediately at home in a foreign country might be returning to a place where they once lived. The soul carries both trauma and wisdom forward through time. The healing journey for past life trauma involves more than just identifying the source. Simply knowing where a fear comes from doesn't automatically dissolve it. The traumatic energy needs to be processed, understood, and ultimately released. For Sarah, This meant not just remembering her past life drowning, but also working through the grief, guilt, and terror that had been stored in her energy field for over a century. During her healing process, Sarah discovered that her soul had been carrying immense guilt about choosing to end her life in that previous incarnation. Part of her current fear wasn't just about drowning, but about the possibility of making that same desperate choice again. Her soul was trying to protect her from both physical death by water and the emotional states that had led to that tragic decision. This is where past life healing becomes profoundly transformative. As Sarah processed these ancient emotions, she began to forgive her past self for that desperate act. She came to understand that the woman she had been was overwhelmed by grief and saw no other way to escape her pain. With compassion and understanding, she was able to release the guilt and fear that had been controlling her current life. The healing wasn't instant or easy. It required multiple sessions, deep emotional work, and a willingness to feel and process emotions that were centuries old. But gradually, Sarah noticed changes. She could look at photographs of the ocean without panic. She could take showers without anxiety. Eventually, she was even able to stand at the edge of a lake without overwhelming fear. But here's where the story becomes even more intriguing. As Sarah healed her past life trauma, other aspects of her current life began to shift in unexpected ways. Her relationships improved as she released the deep grief she'd been unconsciously carrying. Her career flourished as she stopped unconsciously sabotaging herself out of guilt. She even began to remember positive aspects of that past life. The deep capacity for love, the connection to the ocean's beauty, the strength she'd possessed before tragedy struck. This pattern of transformation is common in past life healing work. When we heal soul-level trauma, it doesn't just eliminate fears. It often unlocks positive qualities and potentials that were suppressed by the traumatic imprint. Sarah discovered she actually had a natural affinity for water. Once the fear was removed, she began swimming and found it deeply healing and meditative. The very element that had terrified her became a source of peace and restoration. The implications of past life trauma extend far beyond individual healing. If we accept that consciousness survives physical death, and that traumatic experiences can be carried forward, it changes our entire understanding of human psychology, relationships, and even societal patterns. Generational trauma takes on new meaning. When we consider that souls might choose to incarnate into family lines, to heal both personal and collective wounds. Some researchers suggest that many of our current global challenges might be connected to collective past life trauma. Wars, natural disasters, and social upheavals create massive amounts of traumatic energy that gets carried forward by the souls who experience them. Understanding this could revolutionize how we approach healing. Not just individual psychological issues, but also broader social and cultural patterns. The recognition of past life trauma also offers hope for seemingly intractable fears and psychological conditions. When traditional therapy reaches its limits, exploring possible past life connections can sometimes provide the missing piece that allows real healing to occur. It's not that past life regression is a cure-all, but rather another tool in the comprehensive approach to understanding and healing human consciousness. Critics often dismiss past life regression as fantasy or suggestion, but the growing body of documented cases and the consistent patterns that emerge across different cultures and contexts suggest there's something more substantial happening. whether we interpret these experiences as literal memories of previous incarnations, or as symbolic representations of deep psychological patterns. The healing results speak for themselves. Sarah's transformation illustrates a crucial point about past life trauma. The goal isn't just to identify and release negative patterns, but to reclaim the positive aspects of our soul's journey. Every lifetime, even those that end tragically, contributes wisdom, strength, and capabilities to our current incarnation. When we heal past life trauma, we don't just eliminate problems. We often unlock dormant potentials and gifts. The process of healing past life trauma typically involves several stages. First comes recognition, the acknowledgement that current fears or patterns might have roots in previous lifetimes. Then comes exploration. Using regression therapy, meditation, or other techniques to access these ancient memories. The next phase involves processing, working through the emotions and experiences that have been carried forward. Finally comes integration, incorporating the healed aspects into current life and reclaiming any positive qualities that were suppressed by the trauma. What makes past life trauma particularly challenging to heal is that it exists outside our normal conscious awareness. Unlike childhood trauma, which we can remember and work with through traditional therapy, past life trauma operates from the unconscious level of the soul. It influences our fears, attractions, relationships, and life choices, without our conscious understanding of why. This unconscious influence explains why some people feel inexplicably drawn to certain time periods, places, or types of people. A woman who's always been fascinated by medieval England might have lived there in a previous incarnation. Someone who immediately feels at home with a particular group of people might be reconnecting with souls from a past life family or community. These soul connections often feel different from ordinary attractions. They carry a quality of recognition, of coming home. The healing of past life trauma also often involves forgiveness, not just of others who might have caused harm in previous lifetimes, but of ourselves, for choices we made under difficult circumstances. Many people carrying past life trauma are unconsciously punishing themselves for perceived failures or mistakes from previous incarnations. Learning to extend compassion to our past selves is a crucial part of the healing process. Sarah's journey with her water phobia reveals another important aspect of past life trauma: the incredible resilience of the human soul. Despite experiencing a traumatic death by drowning, her soul chose to incarnate again, to have another opportunity for growth and healing. The fact that she eventually found the courage to face and heal this ancient trauma demonstrates the soul's persistent drive toward wholeness and evolution. The recognition of past life trauma doesn't diminish the importance of addressing current life issues. Rather, it adds another dimension to healing work. Sometimes current trauma activates past life wounds, creating layers of pain that need to be addressed at multiple levels. Other times, healing past life trauma makes it easier to process current challenges, because we've removed energetic blocks that were limiting our resilience and coping abilities. As Sarah's story demonstrates, the healing of past life trauma can be profoundly liberating. When we release fears and limitations that have been controlling us for lifetimes, we often experience a sense of freedom and possibility that goes far beyond what we thought possible. We reclaim parts of ourselves that we didn't even know we had lost. The journey into past life trauma isn't for everyone, and it's not necessary for all healing work. But for those who feel called to explore these deeper layers of consciousness, it can provide insights and transformations that wouldn't be possible through other means. It offers a perspective on human experience that honors both our current incarnation and our soul's longer journey through time. In Sarah's final regression session, she experienced a profound moment of completion. She was able to spiritually connect with Thomas, her lost love from that past life, and receive his forgiveness for the choice she had made to follow him into death. More importantly, she was able to forgive herself and understand that her soul's decision to incarnate again was an act of courage, not cowardice. She had come back to heal, to grow, and to love again. The transformation wasn't just about overcoming her water phobia. Sarah discovered that healing this ancient trauma opened up entirely new possibilities in her current life. She felt more emotionally available in relationships, more willing to take risks, more trusting of life itself. The fear that had defined so much of her existence was replaced by a deep appreciation for the preciousness and fragility of life. Your deepest fears aren't random glitches in your psyche. They're not just chemical imbalances or learned responses. They might be your soul's way of trying to protect you from repeating ancient traumas, even as they limit your current potential. Understanding this doesn't mean every fear has a past life origin, but it opens up possibilities for healing that go beyond traditional psychological approaches. The next time you encounter a fear that seems disproportionate, that resists logical explanation, that feels ancient and primal, consider that you might be touching something much older than your current lifetime. Your soul has walked many paths, loved many people, faced many challenges. The fears you carry might be echoes of that longer journey, memories of times when you weren't able to protect yourself or those you loved. But here's the profound truth that Sarah discovered. You're not the same soul you were in previous lifetimes. You've grown, learned, evolved. You have capabilities and wisdom now that you didn't have before. The challenges that once overwhelmed you can become sources of strength. The traumas that once defined you can transform into compassion for others facing similar struggles. The recognition of past life trauma offers us a perspective on fear itself that is both humbling and empowering. Our fears aren't evidence of weakness. They're testimony to our soul's journey through experiences so intense they've left permanent impressions. But we're not condemned to repeat these patterns forever. With awareness, courage, and the right support, we can heal even the oldest wounds and reclaim the full spectrum of our soul's potential. In the end, Sarah's story reveals that our deepest fears, when understood and healed, can become gateways to our greatest strengths. The water that once terrified her became a source of peace. The death that once haunted her became a reminder to cherish life. The trauma that once limited her became wisdom that could help others facing similar challenges. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of healing past life trauma is that it connects us to the incredible resilience and courage of our own soul. To realize that you've faced challenges across multiple lifetimes and kept choosing to return, to grow, to love again, despite the risks, is to understand something profound about your essential nature. You are not just a temporary personality navigating current challenges. You are an eternal being on a journey of evolution that spans far beyond any single incarnation.